The justice system in the United States is supposed to grant those who have been accused of a crime a fair and speedy trial. However, more often than not, that doesn't actually happen. And during the pandemic, there have been cases of people who have spent over a year in prison waiting for a court date. The Nation wrote a fantastic piece about this, and it talks about a specific jail where people have been incarcerated for a long time, haven't had their day in court, and have been protesting, engaging in uprisings to try to get the public's attention so they can get justice. On Easter Sunday, for instance, about 60 people incarcerated at the St. Louis City Justice Center jail in downtown St. Louis escaped from their cells and joined together in an uprising to demand their day in court and improved conditions inside the jail amidst the deadly pandemic. It was the second major uprising in the CJC since February, and at least the fourth coordinated protest there in the last 5 months. And you can understand why they're doing this. The Easter rebellion began around 8:30 p.m. when protesters smashed the third floor window of the jail and dropped a sign painted in white toothpaste that read, "Help us." A few months earlier, on December 29th and January 1st, groups of detainees refused to return to their cells, protesting a near complete lack of COVID-19 protections. And I want to show you all what these protests look like.
Chaos inside this St. Louis jail. Inmates objects ablaze and throwing items outside shattered windows.
This is at St. Louis City Justice Center, downtown on Tucker.
Officials say it all started with a fight overnight. Inmates able to break out of their cells after jimmying the locks.
That detainee got into a scuffle with our correction officer, who was then jumped by others that were detained inside one of our units on the 4th floor.
They done set their sheets on fire.
The smoke-scarred windows full of inmates, some holding signs, others raising their fists as daylight broke. Activists say this comes after an ongoing protest against conditions at the jail.
So not only are they concerned about the conditions in the jail, which by the way includes overcrowding during a pandemic, they're also concerned that while they may have been charged with a crime, they haven't had a single day in court. And so if you can't afford the cash bail, you're stuck and you don't get your day in court in order to defend yourself. It's insane. In fact, St. Louis City has gone a little over 1 year without a single jury trial. Single jury trial.
It's unbelievable. All right, guys, the great injustice of this is easy to understand. So they're asking for cash bail for minor offenses. And then they're saying, because of COVID, we're not doing jury trials. So you just have to sit in jail, right? So on average, people are waiting 5 months for a probable cause hearing. That's the first time they go in front of a judge and see if there's even any cause to hold them at all. And by the way, as it turns out, most of them are then dismissed. A lot of them were picked up without a warrant, and there's no evidence against them. There's no paper trail, there's no nothing, so they get released. So what the hell did you keep them in jail for 5 months for if they didn't do it, or if you don't have any evidence on them? And the answer is, well, they needed the bail money. Guilty or innocent, it doesn't matter. We're not going to let you out without bail. Now, think about it. If you're wealthier, you have the money.
You're out.
And it doesn't matter, again, if you're guilty or innocent, it doesn't matter if you cut 3 people's heads off. You give the bail money and you are released. Now, they could deny you bail if you cut 3 people's heads off. But overall, rich people can leave jail instantly. Most of the middle class can leave. Only the poor remain. And their crime is not what they were charged with. Their crime is being poor, because if you're charged for the same exact thing, but you have money, you're free to go, and then you show up for your probable cause hearing in 5 months. These people's freedoms are taken away, and a great majority of them are then released later because it turns out we had no evidence on them.
I mean, imagine spending, look, there's one activist who says, I know some people that have been waiting there for 6 years. That's 6 years without ever walking outside. That's insane. And look, what I actually want to bring up is something that I think impacts our police departments, and now, I mean, clearly it's impacting our justice system. What we do in foreign policy comes back to bite us, and that's exactly what's happening here. When you have this like flippant attitude toward prisoners at Guantanamo Bay who very often haven't been charged with anything. They've just been imprisoned with, in some cases, no evidence. They haven't been charged. They're just held indefinitely in Guantanamo Bay. And when we as Americans tell the US government that we don't really care and we just kind of let that go, well, then that emboldens them to do the same thing to us.
Yeah, and they are doing it now to us. And so that's why we were against it in the first place. It doesn't mean you let everybody in Guantanamo Bay go. If it turns out that you have evidence, and some of them we do have evidence, and they have been convicted, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was one of the masterminds of 9/11. Great, we got him. We should put him in a maximum security prison in Colorado. Make sure he never sees the light of day. But a lot of those guys were just picked up on bounties, and we've been keeping him for decades and going, we don't care. We're never going to give him a trial. That's not America. And now, I mean, look, I know this is a phenomenon that existed before Guantanamo Bay, but now it's, the cash bail is absolutely out of control, and it's used to subjugate, oppress, and take the freedom away from people who don't have enough money. And it's sickening, and it's not justice for all, that's for sure. Look, guys, there's been 119 acts of collective resistance in just the first 90 days after COVID began, okay? Why? They're packing everybody into these tight places. People have COVID-like symptoms. They can't tell because nobody gets tested. And then as the sickness starts to spread like wildfire in the prisons, you don't bust out and start a fire and do the toothpaste thing and the signs and all that stuff. You know what's gonna happen. You know they're gonna come in eventually with tear gas.
Yep.
Kick the living crap out of you and then move you to the place in St. Louis called the workhouse, which is a notorious jail where you're gonna be stuffed in worse conditions. You don't do that unless you're desperate, right? So the people running this facility came out after this event and said, we have no idea why they're doing it. They have no reason to do it at all. I guess they're vicious criminals. Shut up, shut up. I'm paraphrasing on the vicious criminals, but they said, we have no idea why they're doing it.
No.
Well, come on.
Imagine
ridiculous.
Being accused of a crime. The Constitution states that you have the right to a speedy trial. You've been there for over a year. You haven't had the first day in court. Imagine that, and especially like if you know you're innocent, you don't even get an opportunity to defend yourself. That's insane. So obviously I can understand why inmates would want to protest that. But as you mentioned, they are treated even worse once they do say something, once they do engage in these protests, and they're sent over to this medium security place called the workhouse. And that place is notorious for mistreatment of prisoners. For instance, correctional officers will randomly and indiscriminately use pepper spray on inmates, water being turned off as punishment. There have been reports of intentionally placing inmates in cells where other inmates are clearly showing signs and symptoms of coronavirus. And there's also, of course, overcrowding, which is disastrous during a pandemic.
Yeah, so I would say the last two things here. Look, ending cash bail is a no-brainer, except of course our politicians don't have a brain or they get bribed by private prisons, etc. Why it's a no-brainer? You should do it based on the level of danger of the inmate, potential danger of the inmate. And you should have a fair standard that applies to everyone. So you can keep people in jail if you have good reason to believe they're really dangerous and we shouldn't let them out. But if you do it based on wealth, that makes no sense at all. Why are we doing it based on wealth? It's inequality built into the justice system. But the second point is also important. Guys, we were trained since we were kids, I know I was, by the American media to think that the system is binary. You're either a good guy or a bad guy. You're either good or evil. And we were taught that all the prisoners are evil. They're bad guys and they're terrible and they're incorrigible. And if I saw that as a kid, I'd say, look at them. You see that? And mind you, I was a Republican when I was a kid, etc. They're starting a fire. That somebody could have gotten hurt. We knew it. It confirms they're bad guys. That's what the media told us our whole lives. And guess what? It's a lie. Remember, most of the people there, when they finally get their hearing, are released. We didn't have evidence on them. And a lot of people are in jail for smoking a joint all across the country. Are they like evil? No, the government and the media lied to you your whole life. It's way more complicated than that. There are some people who do terrible things and we do need to lock them up. And then we have basically a prison industrial complex here that has robbed millions of Americans of their freedom. And the media, instead of having the courage to fight back against that, enabled that system. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.